So, Bruce, if you win, what are some of your ideas around native housing?
Yeah, native housing. Well, actually, not native housing, but housing in general for Indigenous students at Kwantlen. We have a native housing society in Surrey. It's called Kikino Native Housing, of which I used to be on the board that evolved into Kikino. So I do know a little bit about the housing business, social housing in particular. Is it an issue? Well, yeah, it is an issue. There's a housing shortage in the Lower Mainland, and usually students are single. They can't afford the $700 minimum for even a bachelor suite. So we have to acknowledge first of all that housing is a shortage in the Lower Mainland. Period. There are social housing, but even social housing has a priority of who to put in: disabled, seniors, families with children especially. And that's all for good reason, of course. But who gets left out is single people and students. So what I want to do is talk to the Kwantlen Student Association, who are currently working on housing for students on campus, and talk to them about bringing in some Aboriginal resources for native housing, and perhaps setting up partnerships with Kikino Native Housing or Luma or Vancouver Native Housing in Vancouver, as well as the BC Housing Society, it's a Crown Corporation, BC Housing Corporation. So there's a lot of things that we can do to sort of set up the process. Housing is something that can't happen in 6 months. It's $1 million project. But I think if we can sell the funders on the idea that we need very specific student housing for Aboriginal students at Kwantlen, I think we've got something to work on. In addition to that, we can be working with housing providers, both native and non-native, and see if we can negotiate, a percentage of the housing units that become available. So for every, say, 5 or 10 housing units that become available, that would be good for a student, like a 1-bedroom or a bachelor, or something like that. We could negotiate that one unit out of 10 could be dedicated to a student. That would have a compound effect with all of the native housing, all of the native housing, non-native housing, cultural housing, and so forth in the Lower Mainland. So that would be something that's a little bit more short-term and can be helpful. More research, more trying to articulate the reality out there, and using that as a basis to make our arguments for native housing. So one of my top 3 commitments again is financial security, Indigenous housing, and Indigenous food sovereignty. So that's my spiel on housing. Thanks, Sally.